We're live, and me and Gov are back. And I was listening to Bill Simmons on The Ringer, which I sometimes do in the morning, and he had a really good list. And it wasn't just like a normal, like who's better, a historic list, a current list. What I liked about the way he structured this list was he went off of a pure value standpoint. And as a DFS player, and as many of you are DFS players, it's not always who the best player is. It's about where the most value can be found week to week, an ever changing world. And so in this list, you're going to see rookies, you're going to see, these type of things factor in. So we're not just looking at currently, we're looking at value in terms of their age, their location, what they mean to their city. Like Devin Booker, for example, may not be better than Kevin Durant, but he would mean more to the Phoenix area, for example. Some of those things matter. Like Kobe mattered a lot to the Latina community in Los Angeles. So this list kind of encompasses all those kind of factors, and I thought it would be very interesting to put a DFS twist on it. Go, when you looked at the list, what was your initial thoughts? What were some of your, first of all, did you like the idea? Maybe you could even explain it better than I just did there.
Okay, so the first thing that I saw when I looked at his list and how he grouped them off was I didn't have too much of I sort of agreed with where he had the guys placed and who he had in the groups together with each other. Don't really have much of a problem with that. There are a few groups I would switch. Like specifically, he has a group called the Ginobili's, which is his group of playoff performers that are in his top thing. And then he has a group called the Westbrooks, which are like his regular season guys. And I would just flip those two groups because I feel like the playoff guys, even looking at them, are more important than the regular season guys. Not that those guys are bad. I don't want to put them all the way at the bottom of the list, but you're talking groups where it's player number 50 to player 44, and then the other group is player 43 to player 40. And I would just move those four guys to the back of that list and do a little flip like that. But I agree for the most part with where he has the guys on the list and how he has them grouped together. Now, that being said, I don't think he's taking into account any kind of a DFS perspective. But we can go through that as we go through.
Which will be interesting because obviously DFS has its own structure. But I did want to mention, I mentioned up top briefly his kind of mindset, but he even broke it down based on the rules that I'm showing on stream right now. So he takes in salary. Salary obviously matters. Age mattered for him. Length of contract and how much the team gave. So not only that, but max contracts, who the general manager were. The whole structure on the organization mattered to him.
And I'm going to look at it from more of a personal, specific player. What's your fantasy projection? I would take into account the team you're on, but I'm going to take that into more of account of not how you fit with the team, but what kind of stats can you put up with that team?
Right.
What's your actual ceiling floor as just stat-wise with that team?
Well, for example, his rule number 4 was happiness. I think happiness definitely translates to DFS because we know if you're willing to go out there every night, that's obviously valuable to a fantasy guy. Where a guy that, maybe on a losing team, he might have a questionable tag and truly not be as questionable as somebody else, but be on that team and decide, hey, you know what? I'm gonna pull a Damian Lillard here, and not to say that in a negative way. It could be strategic, but it affects the DFS mindset. So he also factors in the player empowerment movement and the happiness overall, and just some of these things. So it's not just a list. So it's kind of really fun. So if we wanted to start though, we could look at some of the honorable mentions. And what I thought would be fun is if we basically picked up the best DFS player from each one of these lists, or kind of highlighted some of these names from a DFS perspective, of guys
Yeah.
you're definitely targeting from each list?
Well, let's see. So I'm just going to go. I'm looking at the honorable mention list right now. I'm going to read through it real quick, and then we'll talk about it. So in his honorable mention, he has Kyle Kuzma, Jaden McDaniels, Alex Caruso, Nikola Vucevic, Gary Trent Jr., John Collins, C.J. McCollum, Ben Mathurin, Wendell Carter Jr., Robert Williams III, Seth Curry, Anthony Simons, Dylan Brooks, Lou Dort, De'Aaron Fox, Jonathan Kuminga, and Keegan Murray. Right off the top, if I'm building a DFS lineup out of those two, I have to decide right off the top, am I playing Robert Williams or Nikola Vucevic? And when it comes to a DFS perspective, if he's healthy, I'm playing Robert Williams. Vooch is always highly priced, but he's also older and
Right.
you know what he's going to do. Robert Williams probably still as long as he's healthy, he can still grow into a better player. Saw that in Boston in the series. So like right there, off the honorable mention, I can grab my center.
Yeah.
Wendell Carter has some value, but it's between Vucevic and Robert Williams right there from a DFS perspective.
I'm telling you, maybe not right away, but Ben Mathurin for the Pacers is going to make some DFS noise. But I have to say,
he's definitely going to have. He's going to be on a team where he has all the opportunity to. So he's probably the rookie on here. I think has the most DFS upside year one.
Similar to Jalen Green, like later in the year, how he just kind of shot out. And I think that's why.
Once Houston knew that they needed to give the other guys a chance, yes, Jalen Green just started getting more run and getting more usage. And I agree. I could see the same thing from a third.
Right. So who on this list is definitely, let's say you play DFS for a week, right? And so you have to play this guy for the entire week. It's almost
so more like a season-long DFS. Which one of these guys do you want for like the season-long?
I'm blending the two together.
If that's the case, then I have it's another 2v2 for me.
Okay.
Maybe 3. I would say it's between McCollum and Kuzma. But De'Aaron Fox is a close third. Because those guys will be running their teams with enough usage around to yes, Kuzma's going to be playing with Bradley Beal. Yes, McCollum's going to have maybe Ingram, if not definitely Valanciunas next to him. And then De'Aaron Fox sort of runs that team in Sacramento. Like those 3 guys have all the ability to just soak up all the extra usage, all the front court usage for Kuzma, all the ball handling usage for McCollum that Ingram doesn't take. Same thing with Fox, all the ball handling because they got rid of their other shooters. So yeah, I think those are the 3 high-end plays from that honorable mention.
We saw it with Fox too. Once they kind of cleared up room for him,
traded Keeler, got rid of Halliburton.
Yeah, but see, people were acting like, oh, they got rid of Halliburton, brought in Keegan Murray. I think Murray fits in better though, because Murray is like a tough-nosed defensive guy, and Fox has got speed, and Fox honestly is one of the fastest players in the league, hands down, with the ball in his hands. So now you got your defensive grinded out guard with Fox. The 2 guys that stick out to me is if I had to play these guys for a week straight and knew I was getting production, I'm going back to Vucevic, man. In DFS, the big guys are consistent.
Yeah, Vooch and Time Lord, I kind of threw them out because I already talked about them. But yeah, those 2, that's why I started with the centers in the list. It's like, if I'm going DFS, I need consistency, and center is a position that you can't put 2 or 3 of a guy in, so you need to pick the right 2 or the right one. So I started with that. But if you throw Vooch and Time Lord out, then I'm looking at Fox, Kuzma, McCollum. But yeah, I would say I would go Robert Williams over Vucevic. But yeah, I would definitely take one of those guys. And then the other 3. But those would be my top 5 out of the honorable mention of guys I would want DFS.
Yeah, I would go Vucevic and Fox. I wouldn't.
Now, I would give honorable mention to a Gary Trent, to a Dylan Brooks, to a Seth Curry, because when they're hot, they have games.
Well,
Trent will have a game for Toronto. Brooks will have a game for Memphis. Curry will have a game for, I guess it's Brooklyn now. But like when those guys are getting hot, they have the ability to be hot. So those would be my honorable mentions. I would give you my top 5 of his list, and then my 3 honorable mentions, and that would be my 8-man core for a DFS out of his honorable mentions.
Okay, so now he spoke about guys he didn't like, and he spoke about Kyrie, Ben Simmons, and Harden. So what we're going to do to translate that to a DFS lineup is going forward, because we obviously don't want to spend a whole bunch of time on just the honorable mentions. But going forward, you have to name me at least 3 guys you like from each of the list and 2 guys you don't like. So
marry, fuck, kill, basically.
Right. Exactly.
All right. So I'm going to marry James Harden because he is going to be what he is. I can look at those 3 names and I will get from Harden what I expect from Harden. Whether it's in his decline or not can be argued. But Harden has been what Harden is. He hasn't gone to different places and just not played how. No, he's Harden. He's been James Harden. Simmons, I'm probably going to kill Ben Simmons. Haven't seen enough from him. I don't have any trust in him. Just go away. Get rid of him. And then I'll fuck Kyrie Irving because he's crazy and the crazy bitches are always the fun ones.
Always the fun ones.
But I'm not like putting a ring on Kyrie. Well, he's too crazy.
Especially for DFS because we're talking about daily fantasy. So
Kyrie. I'm totally taking that as a daily fantasy. I don't know what I'm going to get for Ben Simmons.
Well, that's
fantasy wise. Like he could totally fill the stat sheet up if he's that kind of guy.
Well, that's why.
But I don't know if he's going to come in and be Draymond or if he's going to come in and be what. But I just don't trust him.
Right.
So he will be my 3rd guy on that list. Kyrie's in the middle because he's solid, but he's streaky.
Right. Well, that's why I like, because a lot of his rules in this list translate to DFS, but not all of them. So it's fun to see how they intertwine because obviously he's talking about future. We're talking about present, but a lot of the same structures in which he built the list, like the salaries and stuff like that, does matter.
I would say these 3 guys in the dishonorable mention are all guys who are going to have a high price tag in DFS, but I really don't know if I ever want to roster them. Harden would be the one I would definitely get from time to time.
And I think it's a good sign that Harden took less money in the offseason. It kind of speaks to how he believes in Daryl Morey, the general manager. Obviously, the decision.
Kind of expected him at this point in his career. He was going to do something. Like he's seen what everyone else has done. He's gone and gotten his money at multiple different teams.
Right.
Now he's just trying to be that guy to help win a title. That's why he was able to work and be subservient to Embiid. And work on that team. Like there were times where he would stand in the corner and let Maxey be the second guy next to Embiid, or let Harris just take up all the extra usage.
Which seems like common sense, but I'm telling you, it's a.
But common sense is not something people have, especially high-end athletes who think they're the best of the best of the best. Right. It's hard to have common sense and think you're the greatest of all time and play like that.
Especially
those 2 things don't usually go together. And if you're out there thinking you're the best playing while you're on an NBA court, you probably already lost.
Yeah, especially with the egos, right? You got to have a certain level. You got to have a
certain level of ego yourself to deal with the ego.
Right.
You can't just have no ego dealing with the egos, or else they literally don't listen to you, no matter how truthful or right or stern or whatever it is you tell someone to do something. If you don't have any ego behind it, they're all ego. They don't even listen to you.
Right. People thought.
So that's a lot of these NBA stars.
People thought Jason Tatum was crazy for kind of channeling his inner Kobe, but if that's really what got him motivated, I mean, sometimes with these athletes, you just got to buy into whatever gets them motivated from their ego.
Yeah, but then it's can you perform? Because Jason Tatum, well, let's not get into it, but he needed to perform better in that playoff series.
Well, he'll be on the list.
That being said, basically what I'm asking him to do is you need to be better than Steph Curry, the MVP, the greatest player, one of the greatest players of all time. If you're not that, then you need to play better. That's basically what I was asking him to do. For them to win that series, he needed to be the best player on the court every game. and he was just not better than Steph most of that series.
Well, the
But
quality,
then not many people are better than Steph in most series.
needed to be there. And speaking of which,
No, he was solid. He was very solid. But for Boston to win that series, he needed to be the best player on the court. Or Jaylen Brown. I guess Jaylen Brown could have done it too. But one of those two guys needed to be the best player on the court for like 4 of those 7 games. And other than the one game where Curry literally couldn't hit a shot, Curry was the best player on the court that entire series. And that's just like, that's hands down. Everyone knew that. No one's going to really argue that Curry wasn't playing out of his mind in that series, in that finals. It's why he won MVP. It's why he deserved it. It's why all of that.
Well,
but let's not get too far. Let's not get too far into that. Let's go to the next group.
Oh yeah,
so,
speaking
now we're going through his honorable mention and his dishonorable mention. Start his list of 64.
Mm-hmm.
Bottom of his list, quality starters. So that's what you are at the low end of his list. It's just a quality starter. So his list here of quality starters: Draymond Green, OG Anunoby, DeAndre Ayton, Jared Allen, Fred VanVleet, DeRozan, Sabonis. So if I'm going to talk about it from a DFS perspective, I'm going to split it up into the 3 categories for DFS. You got your guards, your forwards, and your centers, because that's what you would roster.
Yep.
So I'll start with this: Ayton versus Jared Allen versus Sabonis. I feel like there's some disrespect on Ayton, but I've also seen his fantasy score not be that good. So when it comes to fantasy, I'm probably rostering Sabonis or Jared Allen over Ayton most of the time. Unless, like, again, salary could dictate that they all of a sudden make Ayton cheap. But I think Ayton's he's in a reason with his contract right now because he hasn't played better than where he's at in this list.
Yeah.
He plays about as good as a Draymond Green. He plays about as good as like DeRozan or VanVleet. Like, he's the kind of guy who needs to be the third dude on the team. And not like the number 1, number 2 option for your team to do something. And I think that's where Phoenix is from. Phoenix went so far the other year when they basically rode the last good year of Paul and Booker and just let Ayton be the third guy that got him along. This year, you didn't get as much from Paul, so you needed Ayton to be number 2 next to Booker, and that wasn't good enough to beat a top-level championship team like the Warriors. So I think we know where Phoenix needs to go from here.
I would say Sabonis because he's been on such a bad team for a while, and the Kings have the highest upside. A lot, or I should say, they have a chance to have a way bigger upside than the Pacers ever did. And so the fact that Sabonis could be a fantasy factor on a good team for the first time ever, the potential of that would be so high for me that I would have to see what it's like, at least for the first few weeks of DFS.
Agreed. I think Sabonis is the man, and then Jared Allen, and then Ayton when it comes to that. Then I'll look at the forwards. So you could throw Sabonis in there too, but you're probably going to be looking at DeMar DeRozan and Draymond Green and OG Anunoby for your forwards in that. And DeRozan has the clearest high ceiling. When he's been proven that he can take over a game. But it's also was proven in Toronto that if he's your number 1, you're not winning the title. Like, you had to get rid of him and swap him out. Like, you literally had a championship team built around him, where as soon as you flip him for Kawhi, you win the title. Correct. That just shows me that DeRozan is best as a number 2 or a number 3 on a team.
But I would
because if you build a team around him that's championship caliber, and then replace him with an actual top 10 player, you win a title. So that's where I get my reason. But like, DeRozan is probably, like, of this list, DeRozan has the highest DFS ceiling.
But I would say this, Gov, is DeRozan, I think people underestimated him at the beginning of the year, and then they overestimated the fact that he just had one good year. He had the flash in the pan. He had the Julius Randle year. I think this guy is built with a different type of cloth, with a different type of moxie. I I agree with you. He's not a number one, but he's a solid number two. To me, he's not a number three. He will always be a number two until he retires. But he'll just never.
I can totally see that.
Right. He is the consistent meal that you're gonna eat every night. You know what you're gonna get from it. You know exactly the calorie intake. You know exactly how it tastes. It tastes pretty good. It's never gonna be great, but it's gonna be consistent.
Yeah, he's going to come in. He's going to hit those mid-range jumpers. When you give him 35% usage, he can put up 30 points like he did so much with Chicago. Like that's what happened early in the year. He was the second or third option with Levine and Luch, and people were leaving him open. And he'd get all these mid-range jumpers and just average 30 points for like 25 games.
Who?
And it's like, oh, this is the DeRozan from Toronto that we were building a team around. This Chicago team can have legs as long as people stay healthy. And the second you say that, Levine's knee gets hurt. It hurt it or something.
Obviously, the only.
And now DeRozan goes to being the main. Now Levine's out, and DeRozan goes to being the main guy on the team with Vooch. And that's when Chicago started having problems.
Yeah.
Because like DeRozan would have the occasional good game because he is a very solid player, but we proved that he can't really be the number one guy to run a team through.
Right.
It just doesn't have that much, and that's basically what happened to Chicago. Why they barely made it into the play-in or whatever.
Let me do this, and we can move on to the next list just for time's sake. Would you go DeRozan or Van Vliet? If I said you had to roster one of them for 2 weeks straight, DFS.
Ooh.
So whether they play or not, no matter the matchups, you have to play.
I was about to say, like, I want to say Van Vliet, but because of the way Toronto works and because of Van Vliet's, like, he's a little injury prone. He tends to play for 6 games and sit out 3 and play for 6. So, like, I feel like DeRozan would just play 2 more games over the course of a week or 2 than Van Vliet would.
I think that's a perfect.
But I think they might have I honestly think they might have similar outputs in those games.
I think that's
because Van Vliet's a very solid player.
Right. Van Vliet at his highest is probably going to score more, but he's not going to give it to you on a nightly basis. At least
people forget Van Vliet and Siakam are the only 2 on Toronto that have a ring from that Kawhi year. They were rookies that year that Kawhi was there.
Right.
And they won that title.
And we saw what Fred.
So Van Vliet has playoff experience.
Well, not only that, but we saw in DFS when Van Vliet wanted to empty the tank, he put up some really good numbers. But DeRozan was way more consistent on a much better Bulls team this year. Let's go on to the next list, talking about upside. Why don't you break down the list for people and then tell them how you're going to pick the guy from this list?
Yeah. So he's got this listed as the upside game. So his upside game: Tyrese Halliburton, Tyrese Maxey, Herb Jones, Jaren Jackson Jr., R.J. Barrett, Franz Wagner, Josh Giddey. So all a bunch of young guys. So I see why he's got it with the upside game. They're not like rookies. I mean, Herb Jones was just a rookie, and so was Franz. But now you got like second, third year guys who all are in very solid situations. I think of those guys, Halliburton, if he actually does well, has a very good shot because I really love his talent. Herb Jones, if he can take a step forward, is in a superb position in New Orleans to have great DFS success. Giddey is my wild card. I kind of like Giddey. Like, there's a lot to like in him. OKC's going to let him basically run that team with Poku and Ford and all the other little guys they got. This is a really good range. These are all guys who are probably going to be mid-priced at their position. And I think Giddey, I think Maxey, Jaren Jackson, when he doesn't get in foul trouble, have already proven that they have a top-tier all-star level ceiling. Franz, RJ, Herb all had very solid games last year where, okay, if they can consistently do that or do a little better than that, they could also be very good. So I think I agree. I think all these guys have huge upside, especially even in their DFS ability.
Okay, Gov. you know how NBA is, right? Last second lock and how time gets ticking, right? And you got to make the decision quick and be reactionary to news.
Oh God! I'm just locking RJ Barrett.
I'm going to give you 6 seconds to tell me which one's the best player on this list. 1.
I'm gonna go with RJ Barrett. He has the most rounded game. He can guard the most positions. He's shown the best defense outside of Jaren Jackson, but Jaren Jackson gets in a lot of foul trouble. Giddey might have a higher ceiling, but he has to grow into it. Barrett is ready to be the maybe number 1, definite number 2 on the team right now.
Give me Franz Wagner. I think Franz Wagner.
Don't hate that. Don't hate that at all.
I think Franz Wagner, with all the other weapons they have on that team is better than people think, and they have the number 1 pick. Like he already played well, and that team got much better. I think he has the highest upside for triple doubles, which I always look at. Let's go on to the next list here, the playoff guys. Go.
All right. So his Ginobili's, as he calls them: Tyler Hero, Jordan Poole, Desmond Bain, Marcus Smart, Jalen Brunson, Andrew Wiggins, and Mikal Bridges. So, like, DFS-wise, you got a bunch of guards, and of them, DFS-wise, it's going to be Jordan Poole. If he does any kind of season like he just had, where he was basically Steph Curry light off the bench, he is the best DFS player of all. Wiggins has already shown he can be a beast. I would take him number 2.
I would take Brunson.
So I'm going with my Golden State guys. I'm not going to say Jalen Brunson is the weird one. His new team, I got to see how he does.
I think he's playing with his dad. He knows they want him. He mentioned it in his rules. There is something to being happy, to being comfortable, to being content. I think Jalen Brunson's probably pissed off right now that everyone's kind of making fun of his contract and, making fun of this. Like, we could argue, right, that Patrick Mahomes in the NFL got paid too much. You could make that argument and still like Patrick Mahomes. At the end of the day, the money matters for a list like this. It matters for the general managers and the managers and the coaches, perhaps. But from a DFS standpoint, it's like once they got their money, maybe it affects how they play, and that would affect you. But outside of that, like, you can disagree with the contract amount and still like the player as a value. I think Jalen Brunson has the highest upside on this list, and therefore I would take him or Wiggins are my 2 favorites.
I would still say, again, Poole could be the throw. I would throw him in there, but Poole, Brunson, Wiggins are definitely the 3 on that list. Smart and Bridges, I feel are going to be too much. Like, they'll have their defensive games in DFS where they have great 30, 40-point games because they get like 5 steals, but those are going to be where they get their big games. Well, and then I think Bain and Hero are a little less inconsistent than Poole, Brunson, and Wiggins. I think they're just at next year. They're basically the same. They're just at slightly less.
Well, people also forget that Marcus Smart didn't play particularly well from a DFS standpoint until he started playing point guard. And now that the Celtics have Brogdon, they're going to ask Smart to do less with the ball. And when you have the ball, when you're not orchestrating the offense, to your point with Fox earlier in the show, you're not going to be able to put up as many assists and some of these other stats. Although steals are more valuable on a set like DraftKings than they are in like real life. So like there is a given.
But you usually can't like offset the 2 or 3 assists that you're now not getting with 2 or 3 steals. Like maybe now you're focusing on defense, you get 1 more steal. That doesn't do it. Same thing. That's why the same thing with Mikal Bridges. He's going to be on a team with Booker, with Chris Paul, with someone, even if it's not Aiden, who's probably going to be a higher usage guy than him. So, like, as good as he is, and he will have his games when they need to go to like a 3rd or a 4th option, Bridges is like that next guy. So, like, it's clearly Poole, Brunson, Wiggins. Then you get then I would take the defensive guys, Smart and Bridges.
Right.
Then I would take the secondary shooters. Because Hero will have his games, and so will Desmond Bain. But Bain's going to be fighting with Dylan Brooks, and and with and behind Ja Morant.
Right.
Like, he's going to lose out to Ja, and there's going to be times Brooks is just hot enough and takes the shots. So
speaking of Brooks,
that's so Bane's going to be there. Same thing with Hero. Hero's going to be behind Jimmy Butler when he wants to shoot, and when he decides to be aggressive.
Right.
And if they keep Lowry, or
Hero could literally get you 0 or be the hero.
Yeah. And then Hero's also in that situation. If somehow Miami does this flip and now Hero is Donovan Mitchell, Hero on Utah could be a little different. If Utah decides to just completely tear it down now that they traded Gobert.
Right. Well, the same could be said for the Aiden if he goes to Indiana. Which, we saw him down the list a bit further. Let's go on to the Westbrook tier, the regular season guys.
See, these guys I would actually put behind these Ginobili's. I like those Ginobili's. Those are good playoff guys. They're going to add things to you. Now, these guys are going to be really good in the regular season, but I just don't know. His Westbrook tier of regular season. That's Bradley Beal, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Jaden Ivey, and Dejounte Murray. I love Murray. He's my favorite of those four. I liked playing him last year. The only thing I don't like about Dejounte Murray is that he plays for Greg Popovich, who I absolutely hate in DFS. So that being said, probably playing a lot of Bradley Beal in DFS.
Assuming that most people do listen to this, obviously are familiar with DFS because those are the streets we run in most. Explain to people, though, if they are stumbling across us because of Bill Simmons and the love for the Ringer, and they just want to watch somebody break down this list, why do you not like Greg Popovich and DFS? And how does Murray open up the Hawks in a different way?
Murray is an amazing. He's basically like Aaron Fox. Yep. He's one of those guys. He's the point guard. He's going to run that team. He's going to get all the usage. He's going to have all the ball in his hands most of the game. And because, again, the plus of Pop, he's going to be in Pop's system. That's a great system. It's efficient. There's a reason he had a Tim Duncan, the big fundamental, playing in that system and making it work for so long. It is all about efficiency and consistency with what we're doing in that Spurs system. So good. That being said, Pop is one of these coaches that likes to do stupid crap DFS-wise. He doesn't put out his lineup until right at the very end. And then he'll just late scratch a dude right after it. So, he'll put out a starting lineup, and then 2 minutes before the game starts, he'll put out a starting lineup 5 minutes before the game starts. Then 2 minutes before the game starts, this guy doesn't look like he feels good. He's a late scratch. Will not play. And it'll be like last year. It won't just be some dude. It'll be Dejounte Murray.
Yeah.
Who's like a heavy price guy who you're basically building your DFS lineup around and expecting a heavy game from. And then all of a sudden you're like, okay, he's in the lineup, we're good. And then all of a sudden, boom, he's not. And Pop is one of those coaches that does that a lot, where he gives you no time to actually know what his lineup is. And then he's totally liable to change it right before you have any chance to actually do anything. Almost like he's trying to mess with people, gamblers, DFS players, whatever. He'll do a lot of things that he can do as a coach that just seems to really upset people in DFS who are just like, I'm just trying to set a lineup. Which means I just sort of want to know who you're planning on playing tonight. Doesn't seem like in football, teams have to have all that stuff out an hour and a half before the game. Correct. It's only like basketball and soccer, where you technically don't have to put your starting lineup out until 3 to 4 minutes before the game starts. You hand it to the ref 4 minutes before the game starts, and that's technically when you have to do it. You don't have to do it any time before that. Most people customarily put their lineup out half hour to 20 minutes before the game starts. Sometimes before it. If after a shoot-around they know who's playing, they put the lineup out.
Well, it's not just Popovich. Steve Kerr is also...
No, there's a few coaches that do it. Nick Nurse for Toronto is also pretty good at doing that.
Right.
There's a couple of coaches that do it, but Pop has been doing it for years. Like, even now, like, even if I mentioned to you, like, Pop's the guy who first started hitting his star players in a primetime game that's on television just because. Like, you could sit him any other game, or you could just never sit him or anything like that. But no, you're going to sit him on the Friday night ESPN primetime game. And all of a sudden, just like, Tim Duncan and Manu Ginobili not playing tonight.
Well,
like, Pop has done this for years, so they call it being popped, sort of. Like, I know many people in the DFS is like, shit, we've been popped when a lineup shit. And it might not even be the Spurs lineup. Maybe some other coach does something with their lineup that's just like that. And it's like, fuck, he popped us.
Well, we always.
But that's why I love Dejounte Murray. He's my favorite on that list. Mm-hmm. But because he's on the Spurs, I'd probably pick him Bradley Beal more often.
Well, let me ask you this, and we'll go on to Group H after this. If I did it, we talked about it because we're crazy and we like to get a little wild and talk about all sports here. We've talked about some WWE, some professional wrestling, some kind of circus performances. If I made you have a tag team with these 4 guys, and I said you could have Beal and Ivy or Murray and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, who do you take?
In like 2-on-2 basketball game or in an actual wrestling match?
No.
In a wrestling match.
DFS.
In DFS, I get 2 versus 2. It's a 2v2.
Yep.
I'm either taking Beal Ivy or Murray Alexander.
Yep.
I'm probably taking Beal Ivy.
I am as well.
But it is under the assumption that I'm thinking about it from DFS terms, and from DFS, normal DFS after playing an NBA season, I will probably have more money on the table to build a better lineup around Beal Ivy than I will around Shea Murray. That being said, if Shea Murray are my 2 studs, and then I'm building it with all of the normal value for an NBA slate, that might not be so bad.
I think
it's a very close matchup, but I'm probably taking Beal Ivy.
I think that's a perfect breakdown because I think Murray and Shea Gilgeous-Alexander have more real life upside, but given
if you take it into a DFS perspective, they're probably going to be highly owned, and they're probably going to have a high value, like a salary tag next to them. Whereas Ivy won't, at least not early on. Beal probably will, but he's usually lower than those 2 guys.
And Beal,
so I'll be able to get up more into a lineup with Beal and Ivy.
Right.
And they're both very solid plays.
Well, and Beal is like the man on that team, where Alexander's going to have Chet. He's going to have Josh Giddey, who you said you liked. And so, like, you also got to look at usage when it comes to DFS. But let's go on to the Group H here, because I do think this will be interesting with LeBron James and Chris Paul, 2 of the older veterans that might still have it, but might not have it anymore from a DFS value standpoint. What do you think of this list?
Let's see. Paul, Lillard, Middleton, Murray, LeBron, Donovan Mitchell. So, yeah, you got a lot of the older guard here. I mean, Jamal Murray, not really with Donovan Mitchell, but they're starting to really, like, Murray has been injured, but he's going to be rounding into his career. Mitchell is basically rounded into the player he's going to be. He just needs to play through his shooting slumps. LeBron, Chris Paul, they are. Damian Lillard, they are who they are. I always did like Middleton. I have to see how he comes back from his injury. DFS-wise,
Lillard is the answer for you.
Murray is probably the best. I mean, LeBron is going to be the best DFS play because as long as LeBron is LeBron, he's going to be LeBron and put up LeBron points.
Even if
so I think Murray has the next best upside on that list.
But even if LeBron is 10K, you still think he is like he's
LeBron's going to be 12K most of the time, and even then, he's put up those 60-point, 70-point ceilings that are just like Luka, that are just like Joker.
I think
like they're not as often. Like he's not doing it 20, 30, 40 nights a year like he did in his early years in Cleveland or he did in Miami.
Right.
But like there's going to be probably 15 games out of the year where he's going to be top 2 or 3 on the night in scoring. Yep. If not the top scorer on the night in DFS.
Yeah.
He's just that he needs a team where Anthony Davis does that 20 nights a year too.
Who's the most motivated or pissed off that you're like, oh, no matter if it's 5 minutes before lock or 3 hours before lock, I know this guy is playing. Because I do think this is kind of a prove it list. Like Lillard's coming off an injury, people are making fun of him for not coming back.
Chris Paul had a bad playoff. He's old. Is he really going to come back?
Chris Paul.
Middleton got hurt. He needs to prove it. Jamal Murray's been hurt. LeBron's old. Mitchell, we're wondering about that trade. So, yeah, these are all kind of like, what are you going to do next? We know you're good. What are you going to do next year?
Yeah, we know they're talented, but they all got these they all got the weight put on their shoulders. And which one of them is going to push the weight up and say, screw you, I'm still in the upper tier?
I think if that trade happens, it's Mitchell.
I'm all about Lillard, man. I don't think there's much difference between Lillard and Curry outside of teammates. And if Simons actually takes a step and Nurkic can stay healthy as well, and Shaedon Sharpe got hurt in summer league, if anyone didn't know, but he is a big kind of like lengthy shooter. I don't want to put the Kevin Durant label on him because that'd be too much to expect from him. But he's a weird, like interesting prospect that they drafted that team could be better than they think. I would take Lillard and Mitchell to have like the biggest screw you, because I think LeBron at this point he's just playing for the playoffs. You're gonna get those explosion weeks, but if I said like you had to pick a guy 5 minutes before lock and then 5 hours before lock, I think LeBron James would still scare you because he might rest.
He has a questionable tag. He has a questionable tag right now for the game you're talking about.
Right, he really does.
Like that's just what it is. He will have a questionable tag for every game until the end of time. So you really don't know if he's there, but he still just always plays.
Right.
But I would agree. Like I have Mitchell, you have Lillard. I think they're 1-2. I think Murray's the third. He needs to come off injury and prove that he can be the number 2 next to Joker, and that he can be the guy to move that Denver team forward. Because I've seen Aaron Gordon. He's good, but again, he's one of those guys. I think he needs to be maybe your 2, probably your number 3.
So
if he's that on your team.
Let's go on to Group G.
Next group, yeah. So these seem to be his young guys that they're not going.
Yep.
LaMelo Ball, Jabari Smith, Jalen Green, Darius Garland, Chet Holmgren, Paulo Banchero. So yeah, a couple of first-round picks. Garland, who's just an all-star. LaMelo, who's an all-star. Jalen Green, we talked about him in Houston. It's like, yeah, these are guys, these teams have already shown we're putting pieces around. LaMelo has proven to have a very high ceiling in DFS. Jalen Green has had his games as well. And so has Garland.
So here's what I would like to ask you in this from a DFS standpoint to be a little different with this list. If I said you could have LaMelo Ball for the entire season, he would be locked in at 8K, right? 8K for the entire year. Or you could have 2 of the guys on this list for 8K for the entire year. What do you take?
So I either get LaMelo at 8K or 2 guys together who equal 8K?
Yes.
Or each guy is 8K?
No. So each guy would be around 4K or LaMelo for 8K.
I mean, LaMelo for 8K is super cheap, but any other one of these guys at 4K is like an automatic lock. So like at that point, I just have to take 2 of those guys. Like, give me Jalen Green and Garland at 4K apiece, because those guys would both be 8 or 9K easy.
Right. I just wanted to know who you would value the most of the 2 that weren't Lonzo Ball based.
Like, as good as LaMelo is, I would take, if I could get for the same about value 2 of these guys. Let's say I got Garland in a rookie. Let's say week 1, I could get the same amount for Garland home run as I could for straight up LaMelo. Which could be, I could see LaMelo being 9,900 and then Garland being 88 and Holmgren being near mid price, maybe like 38 to 4K. So it's not quite the same price, but like that's not bad. Where I think I'm probably playing Garland, Holmgren, and not playing LaMelo.
Right. Well, you know me, I always like the threat of the triple double, or the idea that, you know, people don't underestimate triple double bonuses and double double bonuses and DraftKings and these type of other statistics that we don't always think about in real life. So I'm taking Chet and Paulo Banchero because it's just they're gonna get all the usage on their teams. Like these two guys are gonna go all out to win Rookie of the Year, and I think both teams want it as a marketing standpoint. Like I think both teams kind of need that franchise identifier, and so like I think they're going to be, you know, going all out to make that happen. Where like I like Jabari Smith long-term potential and Green, but they're going to eat into each other. And the Rockets have some other pieces too, where like Chet and Paulo are already the best players on their teams. They already kind of walk with that swagger. And I think both organizations are going to go full stop to try to make these guys Rookie of the Year. Similar to how the Grizzlies did with John Morant his year. I'll just skip to Group F unless you had something else to say, just to save a bit of time here.
Let's go on. So Group F, we got Zach LaVine, Pascal Siakam, Rudy Gobert, Karl Anthony Towns, Kawhi Leonard, Zion Williamson. Right off the bat, with what they've done, Towns has the best ability to have a ceiling because he's now going to be more of a stretch forward. He should shoot more. He should be more focal in the offense since he doesn't have to play as much defense around the rim with Gobert.
Yep.
I think he is the best one DFS-wise in this range. That being said, I know what Kawhi has been able to do with healthy, and if he comes back healthy, he's number 2.
I actually like Rudy Gobert a lot because I think Rudy's going to take an offensive leap that people just don't anticipate. I really do. I think for everything you just mentioned, how Towns is going to open it up, how Edwards is going to open it up, there's going to be a lot of pressure maybe for that team to perform. But just like we could talk about Jalen Brunson's contract, forget all that when the ball gets tipped up in the air. I think Rudy Gobert, he's out to prove Mitchell wrong. And so I do think we're going to see an offensive explosion from him that we haven't. But talent for talent, I think it's Leonard or Towns for DFS. Any other mentions you would like to mention from that list? Siakam.
I always like Siakam, but he plays for Toronto, so it's kind of like playing for San Antonio. It's can be hit or miss.
Exactly.
And then he's got to compete with both Scotty Barnes and Fred VanVleet.
Zach LaVine might be one of the better like real life players, but he's going to be on such a good Chicago team, and I just think like when you get Ball back and Vucevic and all those guys and DeRozan, like no one is going to be the primary on that team, so therefore they're all kind of going to eat into each other. And so for consistency reasons, if we're talking DFS, I like Zach's game, but
LaVine can be sneaky, yeah.
Right.
All right, so next group.
Group E.
Brandon Ingram, Drew Holiday, Jaylen Brown, Bam Adebayo. Bam would probably, I always like to go centers, so Bam would be my guy, but I think Ingram has the highest ceiling of all. Because I think he should take over that New Orleans team and make it solidify where it's CJ number 2, Valanciunas number 3.
Well, don't forget the guy just above him, number 22, Zion Williamson. If Zion came back and gave Ingram the chance to throw lobs, which Ingram is very good at, by the way. He's very good.
Yeah, I think if Zion came back and could take over Valanciunas' role as the number 3, I think that would be very, very good for them.
So I've been on the record saying I think Jaylen Brown's better than Jason Tatum. This might be like my favorite, like outside of like the superstar list, which we'll get to at the end of this exercise, this might be my most underrated list of all. Like I think all these guys are difference makers on their team. Like
yeah, I think that's why he gave him the group name. Let me save you some time. No, these guys are not tradable. Don't ask. You literally would have to give up someone who's way higher on this list to even like. You're giving up the better player to get one of these.
These are the guys that if you have NBA League Pass, you know their value. But if you're just a casual, I don't think you understand.
You only know their value if you're a fan of their team.
Right. But let's go on to the true franchise guys that people do know that, like, for sure are not only currently stars but are future stars.
So they got Trae Young, Scotty Barnes, Cade Cunningham, Paul George, Jimmy Butler, Anthony Davis, and Devin Booker. So, like you said, a lot of great stars, plus Barnes and Cunningham are two of the great rookies from last year. I'm partial because I really like Jimmy Butler. But as I said, if Anthony Davis doesn't show up as one of the top 5 guys for a good portion of this year, I think the Lakers are in huge trouble. Devin Booker also needs to show that he can take another step forward and be more of a top 5 guy than a top 10 guy if Phoenix is going to try to keep up. Trae Young, don't know about him.
He's not.
I think he's soft.
He's not so young anymore either. Like I think people.
Yeah, I think there's a reason he's the last guy on this franchise list. I almost want to put him in the other list where it's like you're not really able to trade for Trae Young unless you give me something better than Trae Young. But I don't know if I really want to build around the guy. Kind of like
yeah.
I honestly would swap Trae Young for anything.
I would too, and it's not the nitpick Bill Simmons. Obviously, this is an exercise, and
of course,
and you're gonna have slight differences. It's not that his list is really wrong. It's just I would value Cade Cunningham and Jaylen Brown even more than Trae Young. I really would because of what they can give you on defense. Even Bam Adebayo, who I think is like one of the more versatile guys.
Yeah, I agree. The rest of these guys are all solid top 5, top 10, maybe top 15 at worst NBA players.
I always go back to triple doubles, right? So like triple doubles are so valuable. Like the 3 points. Let's say you're climbing up the leaderboard on a DraftKings night. 3 points, 4 points are nice, but if you can get these triple double bonuses, that's where you can really propel yourself to a different level. So I look at a guy like Anthony Davis, especially early on in the year where his value might be lower because people are afraid of the injuries. And I look at a team that most people probably didn't watch a lot of with Cade Cunningham, having Jordan
Detroit, yes.
Detroit's done a lot of good things to not only be a good team, but like an extraordinarily good fantasy team. I think that team's going to be a lot faster. And people forget that Isaiah Stewart has really worked on his 3-point shooting to become a 4, so that way they can use Durant and some of their true bigs like Bagley more inside, which is just going to open up the possibilities for Cade Cunningham to be the 2-point guard of the future. I mean, of all the point guards in the league, Cade Cunningham has such a high upside. Like, if you told me I had to take somebody for 2 years, Cade Cunningham would be on the short list, even for DFS.
Scotty Barnes would be on that list for me, but so would Cade. So
a different style of DFS is Jock Market, which is DFS kind of investment. I'm telling you, one of my favorite guys to invest in this entire list would be Cade Cunningham. I just think the upside is tremendous.
I agree.
Let's go.
All right, the next guy they have. Let's just get to this because now we're in his top 10.
Yep.
And his 10th guy is Kevin Durant. Kevin Durant. I think we've had the discussion. I feel like Kevin Durant has 5 more years of being Kevin Durant.
I think he has.
In which case, he's definitely in the top 10. I can't argue that he's not at least somewhere in the top 10. I don't care if you make him 9 or 10, but he's in the top 10.
Yep.
Yeah. I think for DFS, that's just something you got to, like, barring an injury, he's just going to be who he is. You just got to figure out the team he's on. Now, he needs a better team around him, but we'll see if Brooklyn can do that, whether that's shipping him to a better team or putting better players around him when they ship out Kyrie.
You guys can't see this. I'm still showing the list, but I'm going to spin a wheel and I'm going to just have a team at random, and that's the team that he's going to get traded to, and then Gov's going to tell us whether he would play him at 10K or not play him. Are you ready?
All right.
Okay, I spun the wheel. It's the Hornets.
Durant has been traded to the Charlotte Hornets.
Right. He's playing with Michael Jordan.
Well, Jordan's the owner. So if he's going on this Hornets team, he's playing with. I'm going to assume that they lose two of their players at the forward. Whoever their two starting forwards are replaced by Durant. Right. I feel like that would be the fair trade. So I know. So that means Charlotte's going to keep LaMelo, but they are going to move Rozier and Bridges.
And Bridges and potentially Washington and just let's
or Washington or Gordon Hayward. Like probably three of those four guys.
Right.
But I think you'd either get one of Rozier or Hayward.
And with Bridges' legal troubles, it probably wouldn't be him. So I'm gonna guess it would be Washington, a ton of picks, and maybe some more young athletes.
You're probably going to get Rozier, Washington, and a couple of picks for Durant.
Right.
So now I'm looking at a Charlotte team that is LaMelo, Caleb Martin, or the other Martin, it's probably the other guard, Gordon Hayward, Durant, and I think they had Montrezl Harrell. I forget who the other guy that started center with Washington was.
Harold.
You now have a bit of a hole at guard, but really, if you fill that with defensive guys, you're going to get enough scoring from LaMelo and Durant, most likely.
So, would you pay 10K for him?
I would pay 10K for Durant on that team.
That team. I think
Durant and LaMelo would be amazing. Like that would honestly be an amazing trade and thing to do. If you were to trade Durant to the Hornets for one of Rozier or Gordon Hayward. Like ideally, I want to trade Gordon Hayward and PJ Washington and a bunch of picks. Because then I can put Durant. Then I can play Bridges or Durant as the 3 and the 4. I still get Rozier and Ball as my backcourt, and then you just gotta find defensive bodies to play center and a couple of guards.
Well,
that's actually a pretty good. Like if Charlotte could do that, I would pull the trigger on that.
I don't think it's possible, but my computer wants to do an update, Gov. So if you lose me for just a moment, keep the people entertained. But let's move on to the next list to try to get this done, just in case.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay, so now let's do his top 10. So, well, sort of top 10. His 10 was Durant. So next list, got Mobley, Anthony Edwards, Tatum, Embiid, Ja. Those are all studs. I think
so.
Mobley and Edwards probably are going to be underpriced.
Yeah.
Like if they are in this tier, they're going to be underpriced for the start of next year. They're not going to be 10. All these guys should be 10K plus, and Mobley and Edwards routinely were 8,500 or so. So I think they're the two going to be value picks of this top 10. But that's probably why they're 8 and 9. Tatum, Embiid, Ja. I think Embiid's going to have the highest ceiling in the most high-end games, but that's also because he's second.
If I told you couldn't play one of these guys for the entire year, which one do you not like the most?
I'm not playing Tatum.
Ever.
Oh, if you're telling me I have to pick one dude and I can never roster him through a 82 game, through 190 days of NBA regular season, I just won't ever roster Jason Tatum.
Okay.
His ceiling games, I don't think even with the Boston system, with what I've seen from him, I don't know if his ceiling games will come enough and be big enough. Like, knowing my luck, I'll roster him, he'll have one of his best games of the year, score like right at 60 fantasy points, and Embiid and Luka will both have 75.
Now, if I told you, because there's some injury concerns on this list, even though they're talented, if I told you you had to take one guy for the entire year, and no matter if he played, no matter what happens, you have to lock him into your lineup, which one is it?
I would want the consistency of Embiid.
I think that's right, because you got that upside of the double-double. Edwards would be intriguing.
Edwards he's the one I'm looking at, but I look at him and then I remember how just inconsistent he was, up and down all year. He would have just as high of a game that could put him in this category, and then he'd also have a game where it's like I wouldn't want to pay $5K. He'd have a game where you definitely pay $10K for him, and then he'd also have a game where I can't believe I paid more than $6K for him.
Well, also don't forget the Cavaliers drafted Mobley's brother, and we spoke about happiness and different roles and different factors that play into this list. I think they're definitely going the Giannis route with Evan Mobley, where it's like, we'll bring in your brothers, we'll bring in your private chefs, we'll make you as comfortable here, and you can own the city of Cleveland, similar to how Devin Booker is beloved in Phoenix. And give us
I can totally see that.
Right, give us a couple years, and we'll find you a Chris Paul eventually. We'll find you one of these guys, but you and Garland keep grinding away, and we'll put a couple guys around you and Allen, and then we'll see what we got. So let's go to the last list here. Let's do it tag team style, like we mentioned. Let's go. Would you go Luka and Jokic, or Giannis? Maybe that's not.
Ooh. Luka and Jokic, or Giannis and Curry. Damn. Damn.
Yeah.
I will give you the straight up facts.
I'm going Giannis and Jokic.
When it came to these four guys last year, yeah. I think Giannis was my most rostered of these four. Luka was the guy I liked to get to the most. Curry didn't have a good regular season, but if you look at what Curry did in the NBA playoffs compared to what he did in the regular season, and you're like, well, if he was just playoff Curry all season, they win 72 plus games.
Well, you made some good points about Poole taking that, maybe he
takes a little bit off. So I think Curry would probably be number 4 here, just because he won't have to do so much regular season. They're going to let Wiggins. Right. They're going to let Poole. They're going to let other guys. Like Steve Kerr is one of those coaches who definitely extends his rotations to let guys play and get minutes and get experience, because he knows Curry and Clay and Draymond and now Wiggins know what the hell they're doing. Joker is my favorite player on this list.
I love him.
I just don't know I don't know how his career is going to go. I got a bad feeling that he's not going to have the career he should, even though he's going to be one of the top 4 or 5 players basically every year he plays.
I think he has the highest upside. I think that team's improved. I'm going to go with the optimistic view that Murray comes back and Porter comes back. They also added Brown from the Nets, who's a very
Bruce Brown is a very underrated piece. He can fit in a lot of spots around there. He'll be good.
Not to get too nerdy on you, but he might be the best cutter in the NBA. Like his angles and the way he kind of moves without the ball, it does kind of remind me of a Rip Hamilton a bit. Like the way he maneuvers around the court. I mean, there are certain guys that will never get that credit, but I do think footwork does matter for guards, just as it does. Like we always talk about footwork in the post, but some people can really run around screens very effectively, and Bruce Brown is one of those guys. I think that was a tremendous add.
Yeah, I agree. All right, and that's the list.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, who's your favorite on the last of what you said? Joker, right?
Joker's my favorite. But I don't know if he's going to have the career he should. Giannis will probably be the one I roster the most in DFS.
And then Luka, does he play over 60 games?
Yeah. I honestly think this is Luka's MVP year. I think this is Luka's MVP year. I honestly do. I'll call it right now. I think he's going to, barring injury, he's going to go off and have the kind of year where, wow, he's going to average like 39 and 9, look like Westbrook that year in Oklahoma City. It's like, but everyone likes him, so he's going to get the MVP.
Last question, since we're talking about untouchables, is Curry better than Kobe Bryant today, July 13th?
Yes. Not that Kobe's bad.
I still say no.
Again, Kobe is one of the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
But so is Steph.
I say no, but Curry's in range. Like, I mean, Curry's definitely aiming down the sights. He needs, I think, one more ring or one more big finals moment. But if he gets it, then I would say yes. Just for what he's done as an architect for the game. Like, he's changed the game. But so did Kobe. So, you know, it's one of those things that salt and pepper to taste. But if Curry gets a few more moments, he goes from untouchable to Mount Rushmore in terms of, like, that next ascension. So, with that being said, guys, I want to wrap it up. I don't want to go too long. Thanks, Gov. We were going to keep this within 40 minutes. We did keep it just over an hour, so I'm pretty proud of that, given as much insight as we gave. We'll be back in probably a couple days from now, hopefully, with another podcast. We'll break down some more future stuff, maybe some NFL stuff. Who knows?
Oh, yeah. Remember, everyone, like, subscribe.
Yeah.
Give us all your comments down below.
We're closing in. If you guys want to like and subscribe to YouTube, obviously, but even if you do a sub through Twitter, as soon as we get to 100 either on Twitter or YouTube, I will do a giveaway of some sort, as promised. So keep supporting the smaller YouTubers, not just myself, but, you know, branch out and see some new content. So hopefully you guys like this. Thanks to the Ringer. Thanks to Bill Simmons. This is a fun exercise. Good night, Gov. Have a good one, buddy. Take care, guys.
Later, everyone. Peace out.